Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. So in this episode, I'm gonna summarize my current 5th edition campaign up to date. It is Storm King's Thunder, which is a 5th edition module from Wizards of the Coast. It's not really a module. They're just adventures, I guess is what they call them now. And it's a pretty lengthy one, a pretty hefty one. But if you think you may play, if you're playing in Storm King's Thunder, or if you think you may play in it, you might want to skip this because there will be a little bit of some spoilers as to the plot line and to how the players react to the different things that happen during the adventure. I'm also there's going to be some minor spoilers for the Lost Mines of Phandelver, which comes in with the starter kit for 5th edition. Actually, it's not a minor spoiler. I'm going to spoil the ending, and then maybe a couple of spoilers for the Horde of the Dragon Queen, which was the first proper adventure, long adventure that they published that kind of ties in. It may tie in here as well. So just be forewarned that those are coming in this episode, and that of course future summaries will continue to reference the plot of Storm King's Thunder. So with that said, let me get into it. So this campaign has been going on for about a year and a half. Our first session was February 22nd of 2020. We actually started this right before. I mean, I've always been playing online with this particular group, but because it was online, it did not get disrupted by COVID or anything like that. And so we've been playing. We had 29 sessions since February 22nd. We've still got a little ways to go through the adventure. There's been a couple times where they've kind of gone off on tangents not covered by the by the actual published adventure. And so I had to make some stuff up on the spot, pull some things in from elsewhere, which I think if you're going to run one of these long adventures from Wizards of the Coast, you're going to have to kind of expect to do that because there's a plot. But if for any reason they lose the plot, you've kind of got to let them come back around to it naturally as a DM and be a little creative about that. So actually I counted up of the 29 sessions we've had, 10 of them have been, was it 10? About 10 of them were completely off the just stuff I had to make up because they had wandered off onto something else they found interesting. And so I just tried to roll that into the plot. And I will mention some of the plots that I've adjusted the plot a little bit from the outset in a couple of ways. So, and maybe when we get to the end of it, I might summarize some of the other changes I made because I don't want to. I think if I talk a little bit about how much I've changed, players who listen to my podcast that's going to spoil some of the surprises that may be still in store for them. Anyway, we started with at level 5. All of these players who've been involved have played through the Lost Mines of Phandelver, although some of them with me. But this particular group with these particular characters they made for the campaign weren't Lost Mine of Phandelver characters. So here's the first spoiler. The major villain for the Lost Mines of Phandelver turns out to be a drow wizard who is manipulating the local goblinoid tribe and the bandits in the area and it has his own agenda. And I got this suggestion from, I can't remember where I got it online, that if you want to bridge the Lost Mine of Phandelver into Storm King's Thunder, there is a potential plot in Storm King's Thunder involving drow and fire giants. And so you could just make this particular drow somehow linked to that plot thread in Storm King's Thunder, because the way Storm King's Thunder works, it starts out as you've got several places you can start in the beginning, and you can kind of sandbox it a little bit until people actually encounter something unusual going on with giants, and you can run that through different factions of giants until you finally converge and uncover kind of the central, hey, what is going on with the giants? And that kind of leads you on more of a Again, it's going to pick your path. There are several options you have from there until you then converge again on the final chapter or the final story arc of the thing. So there's a little bit of places where there are multiple paths that converge, and then they diverge again and converge again for the finale. So here's where we're at. Here's what happened. I set it up so that they're all aware of what happened in the Lost Mine of Phandelver as players. So what we set up is in this variant of the storyline, the heroes who did defeat this particular drow didn't kill him. They captured him, and so he's being held in Phandalin for questioning. The Lord's Alliance wants to find out. They know good and well that drow don't typically operate on their own. There's always some kind of subterfuge and plot with the drow. In this part of the Faerun, they're all from Menzo Baronzon. So the Lord's Alliance wants to transport this guy for questioning back to Neverwinter. Actually, they want to take him to Waterdeep, but they kind of also know that this, again, you're dealing with drow. There's always secrets. There's always surprises. There's always something to miss. And so they decide to do is to send a decoy to Neverwinter and then have him actually transported in secret by the Harpers to Waterdeep through an alternate route. In fact, they're not even going to go over to the Sword Coast. They're going to kind of cut back eastward a little bit and then down a little bit before they head to Waterdeep, just to make sure they're going in completely opposite directions from Phandalin the whole time. And so the players are supposed to be this group of Harper operatives. Only one of them is an agent, but the rest of them are all operatives and stuff that are associated with the Harpers but aren't agents. And they've all worked together before. We established some common backstory around this. And so they're going to transport this prisoner. But before we got to them getting this mission, the actually opening scene was them fighting a green dragon, which is Venom Fang, which is a green dragon that appears in the Lost Mine of Phandalin. That the heroes of the original quest drive off. I mean, actually, when I ran it, they killed him. But again, in this version, he was just driven off. The Cult of the Dragon was about trying to recruit Venom Fang to be a part of their cause. Which, at this point, the Cult of the Dragon is no longer so much interested in undead dragons as they've basically become a cult of Tiamat. But so Venom Fang was driven off, but he's come back and he's nestled in a part of the Neverwinter Woods. So they've been sent to deal with. Actually, they don't know it's Venom Fang. They just know there's some kobolds and dragon cultists skulking about. And so they're supposed to go see what's going on. And then surprise, a dragon jumps out and a big fight ensues. They drive Venom Fang off. They defeat the kobolds and the cultists. But prior to the battle, as they're approaching, this half-elf meets them down the trail in a huff, and she's clearly upset. This is supposed to be one of the people that they contact there is to guide them. And she kind of says, well, the cave's over there. Your friend's waiting. She's really upset. It turns out that the Harper associate that they're actually supposed to meet there is the younger brother of the party's leader, the Harper agent. What's happened is I played a little trick on the players. I had one player make two characters. He made the character he wanted to play, which is this gambling, carousing warlock, Fey Pact warlock, Calder, who is waiting on them. But then his older brother, he's going to play for one session, who's kind of the responsible. And as we work the backstories of all the characters together, this Harper agent is the one they all have been recruited by and befriended, and that's who brought them all together. So you can probably tell where this is going. So they handle the dragon. They go back to town. They get the mission to transport this drow, Talzor Laren, towards Tribor, and they'll meet Harper contacts along the way who will help them eventually get him to Waterdeep. And it's kind of a need to know, the Harpers operate in secret. So there's a way in the book for the Harpers to do it using their transportation circles, but I didn't tell that to the players right up front. So they head towards Tribor, and then halfway there, they get ambushed by this huge faction of orcs who ambush them along the way, and then they notice there are drow in with the orcs, that the globes of darkness appear everywhere. It's mass confusion. The prisoner manages to escape, and they're overmatched, so they have to basically concede and retreat. But before they do that, as the drow are fleeing, one of them summons a demon, which promptly attacks their leader, kills him, and then dissipates back to the abyss with the guy's body. So, well, I think it was with his head. So resurrection is not possible at this point. And so they head into Tribor and hook up with now this new character who's actually the player who just sacrifices his sort of temporary character. So it's a little plot twister, but I thought it was fun, I think. They didn't see it coming because they didn't tell them it was about to happen. The one player was in on it. And we had a good time. So that was our first session. And then we began the rest of Storm King's Thunder. And so I'm going to go through my list of the titles of so that was the prisoner transfer, our first session. Then we had a 2-part session that I called Trouble in Tribor, where they get to Tribor, they kind of settle in, they make contact with the Lord Protector of the town, who is also a Harper operative, and then report in as to what's happened. So she's like, hang out here for a couple days, let me make some inquiries and tell you what you need to do next. And in the meantime, this same band of orcs now attacks the town. And so the party has to participate in the defense of Tribor. Of course, when they first arrive in the local inn, they find Calder there. And so they defend the town. While they're defending the town from the orcs, a couple of fire giants show up and just pretty much ignore everybody. They go to the center of town and just start digging a hole. And so, they're fighting orcs. They turn to fight the fire giants. Fire giants are really tough. And so they just kind of ignore them and keep digging until finally one of them gets ticked off at him and starts fighting back. And the few of them that can speak giant can hear these two. It's a male and a female fire giant, and they're bickering. They're obviously like a couple. And they're criticizing each other and sniping at each other the whole time they're trying to dig this hole. So one of them finally turns on the party to try to get them to stop attacking, while the other one retrieves the artifact that they've been digging up, and it's this giant piece of adamantine metal. And so they then proceed to take off, just storm off and leave the orcs to finish raiding the town. So the raid is repelled by the townsfolk and the heroes, and even though the kind of what's happened is we had some changeover. We had a couple new people join the campaign right about this point who participated in this defense of Tribor, but they weren't part of the original mission. They were new players who had different characters. And so what they're supposed to do is ignore the fire giants and then just head on down the Evermore Way, further east into the continent, towards Everland. But they decide they're going to go giant hunting. They're going to try to catch these giants and leave the two other party members whose players had kind of stopped showing up there in town. So we got a little reshuffling of personnel. But they do track these fire giants across the savage frontier, and this is one of those deviations that took us a long time because I think they spent 4 sessions just exploring the Evermores and the area, getting in fights with barbarians and other creatures, tracking these fire giants down until they finally are able to confront them and actually kill one, surprisingly enough. Which, fire giants are pretty tough, but it was just one at this point. So they have this artifact. Well, back when I got to skip back because I forgot a detail. Back when they were sent on the mission from Phandalin, what they were told was, hey, if you can get this guy to talk and just get him to talk about anything, just take notes. Keep track of anything he says because we want to know what he's up to. Because in his stuff there was this and they give him a copy of it. It's a diagram of this huge construct. This is just this massive, you can tell by the writing, it's in giant, but it's this massive Titanic-style construct, and it seems to be like a diagram or a blueprint of maybe how to assemble the parts. And it's written in giant, but then in the back in Elvish is written the word iron slag. So they realize that as they're looking at this diagram, this thing that they've recovered from the fire giant is a piece of this thing. About this time, they also run into a frost giant named Harshnag, who is not an evil frost giant. He's a good frost giant. He often sides with people to defend the small folk from giants. He's defended Waterdeep before, so he's a heroic figure, even though he's a frost giant. And so they meet him, and he kind of tags along with them. But they decide that what he says is the fire giants build this device, this giant Vonendad construct, which was built to slay dragons. It could tip the balance in favor of they would be, it's like a weapon of mass destruction. So they decide they're going to go to Gonalgrim, which is the under the volcano near Neverwinter, where the dwarves have recently rediscovered their lost citadel or their lost fortress there, and they're going to see if the dwarves will throw this thing into the volcano and destroy it, so that the fire giants won't be able to assemble the Vonendad. What they also learn from Harshnag along the way is that the Hecaton, the king of the storm giants, has gone missing, and so there's this power vacuum where there's an ordering of which giants outrank other giants, and with Hecaton's is just, he hasn't so much disappeared as he's just stopped communicating with anybody. And so the ordering has been undone, and giants are vying for dominance and superiority, and there's, that's the reason people are encountering more giants or having more problems with giants and giant kin in the north. And so, the fire giants are kind of maybe the last people they want to come out on top if the storm giants aren't going to maintain their position at the top of the ordering. And in the meantime, we've got a paladin in the party and the warlock, and they begin to have visions. The warlock from their Fey patron, Archfey patron, and the paladin from his deity Ogma. Ogma is his deity. Visions of kind of destruction and chaos and messages that maybe, it's probably not a good idea for the fire giants to come out on top of this entire situation. So they take the piece to Gonalgrim. By now we're about 6 months into the campaign, 6 months into playing through this campaign. They take the giants to Gonalgrim, and they toss it. They convince Bruenor Battlehammer, who's reigning there now, to destroy it. But in the midst of destroying it, they notice somebody trying to sneak out of the forge, and they catch a party of drow, including the one that escaped from them, who particularly Calder blames for the death of his brother. And so they fight him. The drow manage to escape, but they manage to wrest away from him this iron flask that's just radiating magic, and it's got runes on it. So they ask the dwarves to what is this? Can anybody identify this? So the dwarves are able to help them figure out that this iron flask actually can contain one being. And what the drow have done, they have stolen the fire primordial that sits at the bottom of the mountain that powers the forges. I mean, it's a volcano, so the forges are still powered by the heat of the volcano, but without that fire primordial, they don't have these forges that create these super powerful magic weapons and armor and things like that. So they for some reason the drow are trying to steal the primordial. Well, they put the primordial back, but they keep the flask with them because they learned that when it's empty, you can use it to try to absorb any one living being and hold it in there. So they think, well, that might be useful for later. So they decide. Harshnag has been asking them to accompany them to this place called the Eye of the Allfather, which is up in the spine of the World Mountains. It's a holy place for giants. dedicated to Anam, the All-Father, the chief of the giant pantheon. So they accompany him there. Along the way, they come through this town of Xanthar's Keep, where they had previously stopped before and sort of helped dissuade a group of goblins and hobgoblins and ogres and stuff from attacking it. In fact, they picked up a new party member there. Who's a goblin barbarian named Dor. And I'll go through the roster of the party as we have it right now when I get to the end. So Dor had actually accompanied them to Gonalgrim. But now when they come back past Xanthar's Keep, they see this massive exodus of people. And what's happening, they're like, well, a dragon came and attacked the city. So they go to the town, and it's just laying in ruin. But they find, again, some more kobolds and dragon cultists. Again, digging up, looking for something. The robes and the dress of these cultists indicate they're associated with a blue dragon. So they defeat the cultists, and what they find is, here's another piece of the Vonandad that these cultists have drug up. And they kind of surmise, well, of course a dragon wouldn't want the fire giants to assemble this thing if it's meant to destroy dragons. So they pocket that piece. I think they put it on I can't remember what they do with it because it's real heavy. It's a big thing. Anyway, they proceed on to the Eye of the Allfather. There they pick up one of their current party, a couple more of their party members there. One just meets him there. This is another warlock, Kalmar, who is half drow, and his patron had told him to go there and just wait and see what happens. That's how I managed to logically put this guy into the party. So they found this place pretty much abandoned. There is what appears to be some sort of gate in one of the walls, in kind of the antechamber, but they can't. There's clearly some magical trick to opening it. It's not obvious at first, so they explore the rest of the thing. They fight some. They encounter some traps. They fight a Rimmerhaz. But eventually they figure out the secret to opening this portal is you've got a statue of the god Anam pointing at it, and then around him are the 6 deities of the different clans of giants. The hill giants, fire giants, frost giants, cloud giants, storm giants, and stone giants. And they figure out that the frost giant Thrym is missing his weapon. They put the weapon on the thing, and it opens the portal. I think there were some runes involved as well, that they had to solve a puzzle with runes, which is pretty. From interacting with other DMs online on this is a pretty poorly described, poorly laid out puzzle, and that you almost have to tell them the answer because it's just not, from the clues you give, real clear what's going on. So we worked our way through that anyway. I think it was you had to figure out to touch the frost rune or something like that, but it wasn't very well. The clues did not logically lead to the conclusion that you needed. Anyway, so they open the portal. What they find in the portal is this is the Eye of the Allfather. You can ask some questions to this oracle magical effect in here. There's a dead cloud giant and a dwarf in there. The dwarf is the final new party member. What's happened is the dwarf had been held prisoner by these cloud giants and forced to kind of help them. He's a forge cleric, and so they were using him for his knowledge of runes and that kind of stuff to try to figure out how to get into this oracle room. While they're in there, the oracle told this cloud giant, Blogothicus, that he would never amount to anything, and then this dead frost giant was Blogothicus' son. And the oracle tells the son, you need to step out of your father's shadow, or you'll never be anything either. Blogothicus gets angry, kills his son, storms off, leaves the son's body and the dwarf trapped in the oracle room. So they ask the spirit of the kid, the young frost giants or cloud giant's ghost is also there to kind of explain. Here's how the oracle works. So they ask him, well, what can we do to help you put your soul to rest? Well, it can't happen until my father. I'm avenged on my father. So this sets up this whole side quest. I do not know for the life of me why the authors put this in there, unless they just wanted to reference Horde of the Dragon Queen, because Blogothus and his Cloud Castle are part of that story. But I think it's highly likely that in a lot of running these that the players are going to settle on one of the things they got to tick off the list is go track this cloud giant who doesn't appear in the book. You have to get a whole other separate book and kill him so that his son's spirit can be avenged. I think what you're supposed to pick up from that is if you'll solve this mystery of the missing Storm Giant King, which they also learned from the Oracle. The ordning is broken because King Hecaton is missing. The Hecaton will fix everything, but they don't. They fixated on, well, we got to go to this cloud castle. It's where they use their limited use of asking the Oracle questions where they can find the Blogothus, and it gives them the location of the castle. So I had to pull out Horde of the Dragon Queen and run one of the chapters out of that as they plan to assault Skyreach, which is Blogothus's castle. But as they're exiting the Oracle, they meet a human woman coming in. And she's got on a blue robe, and she introduces herself as Iris. And they start questioning her, but there's just something off about her. And she's asking them, well, what did you learn? I'm here for the same reason. I've discovered the giant ordning is broken and something's going on, and I want to find out, what's going on with it, with giants running amok and everything being out of balance. But the questions just don't ask. So they're pretty suspicious of her, and they're not being real cordial. So finally, she's like, screw it, and she reveals her true form, which is the Imrith, a blue dragon. Who was the one who destroyed? They previously learned Imrith was the blue dragon who destroyed Xanthar's keep. Anyway, so they fight Imrith. They can't defeat Imrith. The Harshnog's just get out of here. So they start to flee, and Harshnog covers their escape, but then Imrith, basically attacks him. He falls over, and the weight of his body slams the door behind him, so they can't push it back open. And they can tell from the sounds on the other side that Imrith has killed their friend Harshnog, the frost giant. So they flee back out into the mountains. When they get out there, they discover another group of dragon cultists, but these have red livery or whatever you want to call it, they and with them is this red-bearded, huge-looking human warrior and armor, and he just looks just deadly fierce. And he's standing there waiting for him, and then he's flanked by these red dragon soldiers. And there's an airship kind of hovering. Actually, behind them, there's a chasm that they had to cross over a bridge. And so there's this airship hovering right by the bridge. He said he says he's going to offer them the use of his airship for their escape. The cultists say they serve Klauth, the great red dragon of the north, who controls this territory. He's been keeping an eye on everything. He also knows about Hecaton and that there's going to be war between giants and dragons if something isn't done about it. And he realizes that the party is engaged, put themselves in the middle of this conflict with the fire giants, and he's offering their aid to the airship to go deal with the fire giants. So then Imrith comes back out in her human form, and there's a stare-off between them and the warrior and as they're boarding the airship. And then the party realizes that this warrior is also a dragon, Klauth, the red dragon in disguise, and he just kind of looks at Imrith and shakes his head threateningly, like, these guys are off limit, leave them alone. She says something about, but they know too much already, and he still stands his ground. So they board the airship, and so they basically got this crew of red dragon servants of the cult of the dragon temporarily aligned with them to give them the service as airship. What they had also learned, iron slag was written on the diagram they had of the Vonendad, that iron slag is a fire giant fortress that's also located in another area of the Spine of the World Mountains. And so they figure out what they're going to do is they're going to go take care of the Cloud Giant and avenge the death of his son, and then they'll turn on to deal with the fire giants. So they head to the location of this castle, Skyreach, which is far to the south. But they head there and kind of surround it from a kind of a perimeter where they hopefully don't get noticed, and realize they're going to have to land and approach the town. The castle is actually moored near a little village. And so the village of Parnast. So they land, they come into the village, just kind of, and they notice that a handful of villagers kind of look at them kind of with alarm, and the rest of them look at them with suspicion. So they spend a little time in the village. They start asking some questions about the castle. They notice that everything that comes through the village is being taken to the castle. And the castle itself appears to have been carved out of solid ice. And there's this big entrance. It's floating about 120 feet above the floor of this ravine, and the village is up on a kind of a ridge, so that the castle is still floating, but it's lower to the point that there's a ramp that you can walk up and go through the front gates of the castle. And these wagons keep showing up. So they investigate the town a little more. The things again are kind of suspicious. Everybody's treating them with suspicion. They start asking some questions in the town, and a fight breaks out. They just ask too many questions of the tavern keeper, and people draw weapons. It's pretty clear all of a sudden that somehow these people are in league with the people in the castle. And again, creeping out of the barns are more dragon cultists. These, however, are wearing white uniforms. So now they've had green dragons, red dragons, blue dragons, now white dragon. Dragon cultists everywhere. And they're mounted on wyverns. One flies off towards the castle. They manage to defeat the other ones, as well as any of the cultist loyalists in town. Eventually, some of the regular town folks kind of pick up and help them out. So they kind of liberate the town from this cult of the dragon that's kind of been keeping them oppressed. And then they since they've eliminated most of the dragon cultists, and no one seems to, they don't know if anybody's warned the castle or not, they quickly have one of the villagers take him up as though in a load, they put a tarp over him and cover him in hay and stuff, typical sneaking in to get him past the front guards of the castle. So then as they explore kind of the castle, they're left in kind of an area where all this stuff has been dumped. There's a lot of treasure, but there's also a pair of white dragons layering in there. So they manage to defeat the white dragons. And as they further explore this ice castle, they find that there's a lot of ogres as kind of the foot soldiers and guards. There's also some goblinoids in service there. But they make their way through the castle and kick in doors, tear stuff up, kill guards, until they do find Blagothkus, and they confront him and defeat him. And they also find the control room. What they learn from Blagothkus is because he's never going to amount to anything, he's never going to be have any status among giant kind, he's thrown in with the cult of the dragon for revenge. But they defeat him. They find the control room to the castle and discover that the castle is sort of, it's Blagothkus' dead wife, and they find her grave and her tomb, but her spirit animates this castle, allows it to fly. And so they're able to communicate with her a little bit, but when she learns that Blagothkus is gone, her son is gone, she says, "Leave now, as fast as you can," and the castle starts shaking. So they get out of the castle just in time. Once they're out, it floats up into the air and then crashes itself down onto the valley floor. So now they kind of go back to their red dragon cultists. What they've learned from talking to these red dragon cultists is that each cell has a dragon that they kind of serve and help out. So they're loosely aligned, but they don't always care for each other because dragons have rivalries, and they kind of, So when they're kind of worried that these red dragon cultists are going to be upset. Well, we just killed a bunch of white dragon cultists, and they're like, well, tough. They got what they asked for. The strong survive. They're kind of this red dragon chaotic evil mentality. So then they get back on track. They had learned through the course of the adventures that that there's an ex-harper, Lord Zamorvan, at Zamorvan Hall near, I believe it was near Silvery Moon, who had a giant slaying weapon that they might convince him to donate to their cause. They go there and find that his son has absconded with the weapon into the Evermoors to try to prove himself. He's going to go troll hunting, but he hasn't heard from him, so they go into the Evermoors. This big swampy marsh area. They manage to find a warren of trolls and defeat them, but they find also in there that they find the remains of this young noble and the sword. So they're allowed to keep the sword, the giant slaying sword. And then they bring the remains back for him to Lord Zamorvan to bury. And then they board their airship finally off for Ironslag, which was kind of where I was trying to get him to go this entire time. This is the path of dealing with the fire giants in order to get to the final part of the adventure through 2 side quests I had to kind of put together on the fly, but we're on track. So they go to Ironslag. They get to where Ironslag is, and at the base of the mountain are these huge adamantine doors that they have no way they're going to open, and they think, well, if we just knock on the door, the fire giants aren't going to let us in. But as they were flying in on the airship, they noticed there's a little village on the top of the mountain. So and there's stairs, switchbacks going up the side of the mountain. So they go up the side of the mountain, and they find this village at the top. It seems like this nice, serene, peaceful village. They're growing crops. They've got this river, the huge, it's not really a river, it's just an extended waterfall that goes from the top of the mountain and goes all the way down, and they've put up a mill there. So they're invited in, very, very graciously by the occupants, which are Yakaria, which are yak folk. So the yak folk invite them to stay, rest up. They ask them about the fire giants. They say they don't, they kind of, we don't have much to do with the fire giants. But they notice that the Yakira have servants there's like elves and some humans. So they ask, what do you got these servants? And the leader of the yak folk tell them, well, they're working off debts. They've all incurred debts to us, and so they're working them off. They're not slaves. They're not being held against their will, other than the fact that they're working off debts. So the party gets a little suspicious of this, but they wait. They're going, until they can. They try to be able to talk. One of the party who speaks Elvish asked to speak to one of the Elven servants and just say, I haven't seen another. I haven't been able to speak Elvish in a long time. May I speak to your servant? So he's able to pull off some successful deception and talk to this person in Elvish, and she confirms, no, we are slaves. They do raiding parties and they bring us back here. And they do trade with the fire giants who live down in the mountain. So the party is trying to figure out what they're going to do to get out of the situation. So they kind of agree. They think they're going to pretend that they're going along with it and spend the night, but then not go to sleep. But the Yakiria have a special ability to take possession of people if they've had physical contact with them. So one of them manages to, through the course of the day, make contact with Dor, who's a goblin barbarian, and temporarily take control of him. So when the fire breaks out, Dor suddenly switches sides with no explanation from anybody. So as they're trying to sneak out, the yak folk catch them aware. A fight breaks out. They're able to defeat the yak folk and free the slaves, and then find that hidden in the behind their mill, there's a pit that goes all the way down to the fire giant's lair, iron slag down at the bottom. And they've got slaves here who are farming for the yak folk, but they also give slaves to the fire giants to work in these iron mines. So they descend down into the mine, and they find some dwarves and gnomes that are being held by some salamanders. They kill the salamanders, free those slaves. They're able to get into iron slag initially undetected. There's some more salamanders posted at the internal gateway, but they take them out pretty quickly. And then they decide to explore. The first place they find is they find themselves in this room where they're smelting ore. They're on this kind of gantry or catwalk, kind of on a second level, and down below them are these big vats, these big places where they're smelting the iron ore. And so there's fire giants working down there, but there's ogres standing as guards up along the top. They also find a young fire giant who's kind of tormenting a dwarf prisoner. So, as usually happens in D&D, a fight breaks out. They are able to defeat the ogres, but then fire giants are coming, and then they fight with a couple of fire giants, and it's getting really clear that they're overmatched. Fortunately, the young fire giant, who turns out to be the son of Duke Zalto, who's the head fire giant here, he's not that tough, so they manage to take him prisoner and kind of hold him at sword point. And we want to talk to whoever's in charge. So the fire giants go and get Duke Zalto, and they start negotiating. And it's like, well, we want you to, he's like, give me my son back. They negotiate for some more slaves to be freed and for them to let go. They start. We found a piece of your Vonendod. Well, I want that, and then there's back and forth. And then they start asking, well, what's going on? And he freely admits he's trying to assemble the Vonendod because blah blah blah. The ordning's broken. Here he's telling the same story, and the fire giants are going to reign supreme and then get rid of the dragons and be in charge. Somehow they discussed that they had that they were looking for these drow that they had encountered a couple times before, and he says, "Oh, what they tell me what's going on," and they start to develop a really kind of a dialogue with this guy, just trying to figure out what's going on. So he learns why they're there, what they all want, what they're looking for, and so he's like, "Well, which drow?" It turns out he knows those drow. These drows of the House Zorlaren. They've been working in an alliance, but they failed him. He's kind of impatient with them. So he's like, give me my son back, and I'll free, a handful of these slaves. And, I'll let you confront these drow. On my honor, and fire giants are lawful evil, so they'll keep their word as long as, they can. So they stay with the fire giants. They rest up a little bit until this drow party comes back. What they figured out is that they were stealing the fire primordial for Duke Zalto. But they failed to do it because they don't tell Zalto, well, we're the ones that stopped him. But this drow party gets there, and they come into the banquet hall, and the party is already there, and they're like, he's like, where's my flask? Where's my fire primordial? And they're like, we don't have it. The flask was, somebody stole the flask from us. And then they suddenly realize that, this group is there, and like, well, they stole it from us. Well, the party's like, no, we didn't. We have no idea what they're talking about. And they make a successful deception check. And Zalto doesn't know who to believe, so he decides to go ahead and they circles the fire giants around them, and they're like, he's like, yeah, have it out. So this was a pretty good fight. This was our last session. Ended this way. They finally get to confront the drow that killed their friend and one of the characters' brothers, responsible for his death. And it was a good fight. I thought, 5e characters can be pretty tough, pretty resilient. Sometimes once they get up in level, at this point they're at 8th level, they can be kind of hard to challenge. But really and truly, even though they didn't, they were never just inches from death, it was clearly because some of the rolls went their way and didn't go the bad guys' way. I mean, we could have had a very different outcome with a lot closer scrape, if not for some good rolls and also some good strategy. Because and let me tell you who the characters are at this point. So you've got Calder, who's a Fey Pact warlock. He's packed to the chain, so he has a familiar who's a blink dog, and the blink dog is kind of his, also relays messages from his patron. You've got Kalmar, who's a half drow. He is a fallen paladin and also now a warlock. He's a fiend pack warlock. He was. I'm allowing him to use Oathbreaker, even though that's supposed to be for evil characters, because he was a paladin, but he was fighting some demons and fell, and a demon lord snatched his soul and said, before you go on, I can restore you to life, but you need to be a warlock for me. So he's kind of broken his oath, but he's now focused on being a warlock. But he's trying to bide his time until he can figure out how he can get out from under this deal. So we have Kane, who is a paladin. He's an Oath of the Crown paladin in the service of Ogma. Oath of the Crown paladins tend to serve, they're kind of built to serve civilization, kings, monarchs, and things like that. But I kind of said, well, he's really kind of an Indiana Jones character. He serves the idea that knowledge is part of civilization, and that's worth preserving, protecting. That civilization has to sort of exist, and that you do that through knowledge and history and record keeping and preservation of things like that. So that's one character. We have Dor, who is a halfling barbarian who just kind of, with a very short attention span, and almost kind of he's played with almost kind of like a childlike naivety until he gets angry, and then he's pretty scary as an 8th level barbarian, even as a goblin. And then we have Halfgrim, who is a dwarf forge cleric. So those are the 5 party members at present. Anyway, Calder turns his blink dog familiar into Tyrannosaurus Rex, which was funny. So they start to fight the drow. The drow, of course, first try to shoot them all with poison darts and knock them out. They managed to shoot Kalmar, the paladin warlock. He saves, but not by enough to prevent. He fails to save, but not by enough to pass out. He's just poisoned. But then Kane, the paladin, casts resist poison on him, and so that negates the poison. And they kind of, most of them are kind of engaged with these drow in one-on-one combat. Some of them drop globes of darkness. They've got 2 wizards with them. One of them backs up and begins trying to cast spells from afar. Another one turns himself invisible. Tall, the one they've actually been after this whole time, turns invisible, and they can't find him. So Dor, the barbarian, charges the wizard and basically tears him apart. The wizard damages him a little bit, but he's in a rage, so he's shrugging off some damage. So it kind of goes back and forth. It wasn't an easy fight, but they were able to defeat the drow. The T-Rex certainly helped quite a bit. In fact, when Tal, the guy they've been trying to towel Zorlon, finally reappears, he appears on the other side of the room. He casts, I think, Stinging Cloud over everybody, but Calder counterspells it before it can. So it doesn't have. It was going to be pretty bad for people. I'd already started telling people to roll saves and could see where it was going before he said, "Hey, wait a minute, could I counterspell that?" And I was like, "Yeah, go ahead." So he counterspells it, and then the T-Rex comes over and bites him in half. So it was a really entertaining and enjoyable fight for everybody. And I played Zalto as laughing and thinking it was funny, and it's like, okay, you can go. So one thing that had happened while before the drow, which I guess was probably the bigger point of this entire thing, which I skipped over, was while they've been assigned, basically locked into a guest room, and Zalto puts his daughter Cinderchild in charge of keeping an eye on him, and she's this sort of kind of probably just older adolescent, barely an adult character. She doesn't like her brother. She doesn't like her parents. They pretty easily can tell she's not happy, and as they're interacting with her, she's like, asking them where they're from and all kinds of questions about the world outside Iron Slag, and they're able to kind of figure out, she's never been anywhere else. And she comments on how sometimes her parents go and visit King Hekaton, but they never let her go with her. And they're like, well, how do they go to see King Hekaton? And she's like, my father has this magic conch shell you blow on it, and it takes you to, it transports you to the storm giant's castle. She's like, it's underwater, so I don't know how anybody breathes there, but somehow it works. But they've never let me or my brother go. They always my dad usually goes occasionally. My mother will go with them. So they're like, well, tell you what, they kind of figure out she wants to get out through a separate conversation. If you'll get that shell for us, we will, we'll get you out of here. So they hatch a plan to turn her invisible. She's going to come and when the drow arrive, they're going to turn her invisible, and then she's going to go sneak into her parents' room and get the shell while they're confronting the drow and causing a big attention on themselves. And then after it's gone and they're allowed to leave, she will go out the back door and up to the top of the Yakfolk village, and they will pick her up in the airship and deposit her in the forest below so she can go explore the world, and she'll give them the conch shell. So, when they start out, she kind of disappears and leaves. What I just described plays out. They arrive in the room and are waiting on the drow. About the time the drow are presented, she kind of comes down from the hallway and kind of nods like, I got it, So they defeat the drow and are allowed to leave. And that's where we left off. They left, and next time we'll role play out the handing over the conch shell, and the I assume now they're going to head to the Storm King's palace and figure out what is going on with why the Storm Giants have withdrawn from the world, and why King Hekaton seems to be missing. And we're into the I think the back half, or the back third, the final third of the adventure path. So Storm King's Thunder, it's got a good story. It can be a little unwieldy. I think it's probably not for a new DM to run. I struggle sometimes with it as an experienced DM because there are a couple of those places where it's really easy to take something that I think is supposed to be window dressing, or just kind of an Easter egg to reference other things in the Forgotten Realms, and make it. But it makes, you can vary without, if you're not careful, it makes it look like that's a plot hook we need to follow up on. But we're all having a good time. So that's the campaign up to date. Like I said, we've been going about 18 months, 29 sessions. Our session number 30 is not this week. It'll be next week, assuming we can all make it. And I'll start adding in little summaries of what happens from here on out as we finish up this campaign. Anyway, hope you guys that managed to listen to all this enjoyed it. And I'll be back at a later time with another topic. I think I've got my Old School Essentials game this Friday, so there'll be a summary on that coming up here in the next several days. Take care out there. Thanks for listening. Oh, and I almost forgot the most important party member of all. William the Goat. During a random encounter, they killed a hill giant. And there's in Storm King's Thunder, all the giants have these bags with random things in them. Some of them are valuable, some of them are random, some of them are kind of ridiculous. But I rolled for what was in the giant's bag, and there was a goat. And so I decided, well, no, the goat's not dead. It's just been thrown in the bag. So they decided to keep the goat. And William has become the official mascot of the adventuring party. Nothing happens to him. He's never put in any danger. When it gets to his turn in the initiative order, I just say, bah, and I move on. monsters and traps and everything are oblivious to William. He never seems to be in danger. So now the players have constructed these theories about who William is. Is William a goat and he's just lucky? Is William some sort of powerful entity that's been trapped in the form of a goat? Is William King Hecaton all this time? And they've been carrying the Storm King around with them? They don't know. They're just going to have to play to the adventure to find out the truth. But they have all agreed that if William ever does get hurt, it's ride or die. That they will go down on that hill facing a TPK against whatever I throw at them to avenge any harm done to their beloved William. So that's probably the best part of this entire campaign, and I almost forgot to describe it. So thanks again for listening so long. Thanks to the players for making it a fun game, and I'm out of here. And that's it for this episode of The Arcane Alienist. I want to thank Dave Bone for the cover art that I use for the episodes. Check out ironseer.com. And the music is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. Thank you for listening. Give me a call sometime through the Anchor app or at the Anchor website. And I'll be back in the future with another episode.